Awesome. We are back. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Parker Rogers. I am joined by Brett Kobold, who is going to teach us about aggregatable timelines, activity streams to action. I've read this presentation a few times. I've really enjoyed it. In a nutshell, it really is just going to teach you hands-on how you can turn all your event data into something that's really valuable and useful in your organization. And if you're just arriving, on the right side of your screen, you're going to see the Q&A and chat. If you have questions for Brett, add them to the Q&A, and he will answer them at the end of the session. And the chat room is for whatever other chatter you want to get involved in. So with no further ado, Brett, the floor is yours.
Thanks, guys. No, I really enjoyed that last presentation. Maybe we'll do a co-res course later on this. So really excited to kind of share this concept with you guys. This was born out of some interesting necessity with my clickstream background. I've been in analytics for the last 10 years, been in marketing analytics, and have kind of gone into a bunch of different side positions from there. Right now, I work at a startup that specializes in customer lifetime value. If you want to access these slides, there's a little bit.ly link that you guys can just type in bit.ly/ag-timeline, and that'll kind of take you live. They're already online. So I want to kind of walk you guys through what we're going to be doing. So there's three areas we're kind of going to be reviewing today. The first is going to be the aggregatable timeline framework. This is based off of the activity stream, which is a popular subject at the Summer Days events, because other people are going to be speaking on that, and I'll call them out when we get there. Some tips on setting up and getting it going, and more importantly, use case and examples. And these things are probably the most exciting component of it, of taking this very often underutilized data and turning it into extremely powerful behavior-based things. Like, people build entire software companies around this concept. So I want to get into the framework. Really what I set out to do when I was thinking through this is, how can I take my previous background and use it to create a common set of language to really help with attribution analysis? My favorite thing is debating attribution. It's been something that's like a pet project, do it daily. It's just a wonderful concept that everybody hates and loves and uses to bash their organization and bash each other, but also take credit for things. So it's a wonderful concept that I just love to be able to work with in data, because you can find so many interesting things with it. Along that, this framework is really aligning people on the same goals and understanding the data. Often the last two are more the use case side. This framework historically I've used in B2B to create like an account score, which is a really powerful concept in the B2B world that we'll kind of get into, and there's a whole talk on that later. And the last one is easily segment by behavior attributes. Very often when you're working with customer data, you're limited to demographics and like location data, and you can't really get into this idea of like, what are they doing? But in reality, what they're doing on your website or in your shop is some of the most important things that they can do. So let's see how this works. The common language we're going to get into is three things. I call it an activity, a user, and a channel. These three things are the basic data points that are needed to work on this concept. An activity is a loggable point in time when a user has interacted with you. This could be a page view. This could be a door opening. This could be anything that is loggable. And everything can be loggable. So it's a really abstract concept, and there's a timestamp associated with it. When it happened and what happened. The user or account that did it. User is much more applicable in the B2C world, where you're dealing with a lot of people data and anonymous, and account is when you're getting the B2B world. So this concept really spans both sides of the analytics framework. So the user is who did it or what account did it, and we'll get into a little bit what that is too. And then channel, what source drove that person or company to the activity. This is where the attribution side comes in, and is a very highly debated concept, but we'll get a little bit deeper into that. So to go a little bit deeper, an activity is that loggable point in time. Some examples of this, specifically in the digital realm: page views, ad impressions, email clicks, add to carts, purchases, ticket creates. It's anything that a person could do. or an account, like if you're in the B2B side, intent data, where someone is searching for subjects on your product and they're looking on product review websites, things like that. And metadata associated with these, session IDs, which tie all this stuff together, A/B testing buckets, page descriptions, things that describe or can bucket the activity. User account. This is the CRM ID, the user ID, whatever thing you have attached to PII, that is your primary ID system. That can be your anonymous web IDs, which are when you're on the web and you're collecting your Google Click ID, your Google client IDs, your Snowplow client IDs, all of those web IDs that kind of roll up into that many-to-one relationship between anonymous web visitors and known people. And then lastly, account ID. So what business, company, all these things are rolled up to. And channel, I want to get away from just channel being the digital concept. Channel could be lots of things. Billboards, display, paid social, paid search, streaming services, guy spinning a sign. Like, yeah, that data is going to be super hard to collect, but it's not impossible. When somebody comes to your store, they tell you they came in because of the guy spinning a sign. So there's channels really. I want to abstract that out, and you'll see what I do with channel later, and kind of describing what I believe is actual importance is. So let's get into what this is. It's the activity stream. It is, and this is an example table. You got your person ID, timestamp, activity detail, and channel. Activity is the thing that happened. Activity detail is the description of it. Obviously, that can be expanded in a couple more ways, but it's really this very simple table that you can collapse any type of loggable event into, and really build this amazing source of information that you'll see what you can do with this. And definitely check out activityschema.com. This is an open source framework that narrator.ai put out, I think last year or the year before, that blew my mind when I found it, because I was developing this concept in my head and with my company about 3 or 4 years ago, and this company just also developed it on their own, and it just was like stars lining, and they have an amazing resource, and some of the material of the SQL queries and examples I'll point out came from activityschema.com. So highly recommend checking that out. They're building a really interesting, unique product. So when you take this table, what really it gets into is, and why I have this bizarre title, is what I call Boolean badges. When you have a list of every single thing a person or account has done, you can create true-false statements. User has done X, account has done Y. And you're kind of seeing here, person ID 192 ... has viewed blog, true, has viewed ad, true, has attended event, true. These are all things that are very easy to understand, that somebody has done a thing. And when you have this badge, you get into this very unique way you can conduct analysis and applications, especially with tools like Census, that we'll get into, like some of the applications for like reverse ETL. So, and a couple examples for queries that this is the simplest possible way to do this. It breaks down into case statements. This is doing a sum because it's just a little bit easier to get Booleans this way. When activity equals page view and detail is like blog, return 1, sum that up. So if greater than 1, then you have a true statement. And you run this across every single person, and now you have this massive table of true-false statements that breaks up into almost infinite segmentation based on behavior. And so because this is such a standard schema, and this is one of the arguments that accountschema.com makes, because it's such a common, like 8 columns, you can write very comprehensive SQL or very comprehensive and powerful SQL statements with a simple framework. So this is an example of pulling like the Boolean statements, but this is an example of using 2 statements on top of each other. And this is a query directly from that resource, where you take a conversion and how many times something occurred before that conversion. So it's basically joining back on the timestamp and the customer. And this is a little bit complicated in this one, so I recommend checking out the documentation to kind of get a little bit deeper into it. But it's this concept of you can create very simple things of total number of X before Y has happened. So in this example is be what's the total number of page views before product? And you can start to like stack these really cool, complicated behavior things and kind of try to understand what's going on with your behavior, especially with your website. This is a workflow that I have used to kind of deploy this framework at a couple different businesses. Everybody's familiar with rolling up data into a data warehouse. You got Fivetran, you got Stitch, you have all these amazing tools and custom data engineers. All that work goes into a data warehouse, and that's where the magic starts to happen, where I like to split off into two areas. I leave my activity stream as an intact table because there's actually use cases you can do with that, which I'll go into. And then the Boolean system, where you're building these two tables that sit on top of all of your event data. And this is all as simple as literally renaming any type of loggable event using that schema. And so it's very easy to stack things on top of each other and uniting them together. And the coolest part is when you have it's really difficult to do things with a activity stream. Like it's just a bunch of loggable events. But it's much easier to execute when you have a true false. Person has done X, account has done Y, and that makes it very easy to send into platforms. So if a person has purchased a specific widget and has also signed up for the newsletter, true. That means I can trigger an entire campaign off of that and launch all kinds of cool personalizations through whatever platform. And I'll go in a little bit more deep into that in the use case example. And then the visualization layer that sits on top of this stuff too. Like it's much easier to count true false statements about number of people who have done X when you have just a very simple data schema of X, Y. And you build these Booleans to your business logic. What is important to your business? What are your primary conversions? What are your secondary conversions? What matters to you? Obviously, you're not going to build thousands of these, but you can build some very reliable ones to really count what's most important. So now we're going to get into the fun stuff of the use case and examples. And the four I want to go over are aggregating the people tables into the account scoring system, estimating the buyer's journey. This one I'm the most excited about, and we had a version of this at one of my companies, and it was pretty cool. Really excited about that. Activity-based attribution, which is a whole idea in itself that I could talk about for hours, and features for machine learning algorithms. That's also a really powerful one. So account scoring. I'm going to call out a session on this. I believe Donnie is doing a session, I think in track 1 at the end of the day, on how to build an account scoring model. Highly recommend checking that out. I spoke with him, and he's going to do an astounding job presenting that. And another person, Timo, I think I'm saying that correctly, he has a session on using the activity schema, I believe in track 2, and we just happen to be talking about the same thing. We were talking offline about that. But definitely recommend checking out his session to kind of get his perspective on how to use this type of data. So account scoring, this is something I'm also super passionate about, where you can take a stream of activities, assign a point value to it, and create these two entities that can revolutionize a business. Think of the account scoring similar to lead scoring, where you take a activity, assign it a point, and you aggregate those points up. For account scoring, we develop two views off of this stream. Yes, apparently Don's workshop is tomorrow, so hit that up tomorrow in the afternoon. Definitely going to be an amazing session. There's two concepts that I like called rank and deep. Rank is a aggregated view of everything based on account ID of all the account scores. And this gives you previously we did a 90-day rolling window. So every single day we had a refresh view of who's most interacting with our brand and our account. We had websites, page views, event attendance, and we could prioritize our ABM initiatives based on that. And sales, oh my gosh, sales love this because they really can understand what accounts to talk to instead of just a bunch of random leads that are coming through the system. And the other half of that coin is what I call deep, which is a framework built on top of the activity stream itself, where you're showing the activities, the sales, because I believe context is what creates sales. When you can understand what a person has researched, what they are trying to do, their objectives, the things that they have read and gone after, you can have a much more concrete conversation. And even in the deep section, there is the Boolean system, where you can create very specific yes/no criteria to say if someone fits into something. An example of this was a upselling concept we developed, where if people were visiting our documentation and a specific product on there, they did not have that product, and then they actually were like downloading raw data in the product. Because all of that data was in one stream of information, I could create very simple yes/no statements and literally flag to our sales team, this account and this company, these people did these three things. Go talk to them. And without having all of that disparate data in the same place, we wouldn't be able to create this very comprehensive product data, product feature data, and web clickstream data from a documentation website. So without all that, we wouldn't have the opportunity to create these kind of upsell opportunities. Pro tip, documentation websites are completely unutilized, but if a company is researching a specific type of documentation, they're probably interested in that product. So definitely look into that. We found that to be a wealth of information. So when you have the Boolean badges, you also have this concept of the buyer's journey. And this is more applicable to B2B, but also can be in the B2C world if you have longer sales cycles. One example of this is with these badges, since they're yes, no, if a person has done X and Y, you can assign them to a stage. So you have very specific events that and Boolean badges that are geared towards different parts of the buyer's journey. And this is a very simple awareness, consideration, decision. Obviously, it's very custom to the business. Where had to add impression and search intent data. That company is at the very beginning of their journey. So you assign them to the awareness bucket. And that could be account known or person known. Consideration, decision, had a sales call. These are badges you can say like what point they're in. And the reason that's important is you can build these tables, both a people and account table, to aggregate up to like, where's your business at? Do you have more people in consideration or do you have more people in awareness? So it's it's almost like an opportunities table, but you can look at it from the account perspective. I really tried to understand how to bring accounts, companies, and people along the buyer's journey. And we made it simple of just aggregating up the max buying stage by account ID, and that just made it easier to deal with. There's obviously time decay and all this other methodology you can build into it, but this is one of the simpler ways we did it. And then where you get really cool is when you can take these systems and send it to things to actually move people along the buyer's journey. So you know that this person and this company's at the consideration stage, you send them decision level assets to try to convince them to engage deeper. And you can send that through your ESP, your site personalization, CRM, all of that kind of great stuff. And then you build your account scoring onto your visualization layer. So tools like Census are amazing for taking that warehouse forward system and sending it to all your personalization tools. Another use case, activity-based attribution. This is actually a lot of what the accountschema.com calls out. They have really a lot of good material on that. This is where I get a little controversial. Marketing attribution is used on channels because that's the most obvious lever we can pull. We spend a lot of money on the digital and offline marketing channels. And every single time we talk about attribution, people are like, what channels are driving extra traffic? I think there's something else we could be doing. We should be looking at all activities that we spend money on. Yes, you do spend money on a channel, but a channel is merely a delivery mechanism for the activity. People aren't buying your product because of Facebook. They're buying your product because they clicked on an ad, which had your brand on it, landed on your website with content and things to convince them to do the next thing. Facebook had nothing to do with it. It was merely a delivery mechanism that you can attach cash to. So this is a very basic overview of how I like to look at this. To not focus on the channel attribution, but activity attribution. All I really do is use channels to attach cash to, so I can understand how much I'm paying for people to get to my website or my event to do things. So all of these red dots are activities, and this is basically like what are these activities drove somebody to the opportunity or to the purchase. So that's really what is important. And the last one is machine learning features. There's a little short section. Because they're Booleans, they're so much easier to work with. You can use tools and models like logistic regression and tree-based models to run your much more aggregated data, because you're not dealing with long data. You have wide data on like what person IDs have high CLV, have turned in an opportunity, has purchased. And you can create this infinite number of behavior-based attributes to really drive in trends prediction. So I call myself a dangerous data scientist. I work with a lot of data scientists, but I don't do a ton of modeling. So I do a lot more of the analysis side. So these are just some of the major use cases. So that's kind of the idea, in kind of a short 20 minutes, kind of taking you guys through what I believe is a super powerful framework, and love to be able to talk and answer any questions for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So we actually did get a few questions. Do you want me to read those off for you, and put them on the screen, or do you see them?
Yeah, go ahead and pull them up. That way it's awesome. A little easier for everybody.
Perfect. So that first one is from John Jimenez. These activity streams are normally in various tables, and these activity tables events can often be very large. How do you make an activity stream table that can be queried?
Union. I know that's a terrible answer, but it's really as simple as that. I built one of these from a Adobe Analytics data stream, a Marketo data stream, a video platform, and our product analytics, which are stored in Pendo. And it's as simple as renaming those primary keys to the same thing and unioning them together. So you don't build a view that queries all of them at the same time. You build a pipeline via like DBT that on a daily basis dumps those in. If you need more real-time stuff, that's where you get into a little bit more performance stuff. There's two fields that activityschema.com thought about that I didn't know about, that actually has like number of times event has occurred, and like has occurred before. And these two things make it so much easier to do analysis on it. So it's really as simple as finding all your tables, renaming those columns into activity detail, and unioning them together. Definitely check out that post, and or the schema, and you'll see a great example of that.
You said there's a post about that? I can find it and add it to the chat.
Yeah, it's literally just activityschema.com, and you'll find a GitHub repo. It's built. I'm like plugging that company. I don't work for them. I just really like their content. So go check that out. That's the open source.
I'll pull up the next question, and then I'll add that activity schema thing. So this one's actually for me. So in your experience building activity streams, which step in the building process is the most difficult to implement?
Identity resolution.
Which one makes you lose hair? You haven't lost your hair, but which one would make you lose your hair?
I know. I do have a lot of pretty thick hair. Identity resolution. That is the most difficult concept, especially dealing with clickstream data. Clickstream data is funny because you collect a person's ID maybe in the 7th line of that person's session, because they don't log. That's the first thing that's logged is not a login event. They do a bunch of things, fill out an account, and then send you their email. So 7 events, page views, and add to carts aren't attached to a person. So you have to like back propagate IDs in order to get the rest of the data. And you have to also deal with multiple emails. Generally, I recommend people try to use email to dedupe everything, and then build some sort of in-house person ID identity resolution system. Or if you have a CDP, it takes care of it for you. All about the CDP life, but not everybody has that benefit.
Okay, so are you a fan of CDPs?
Yes, I am. Awesome. I'm also a fan of data warehouse forward type CDPs.
Okay.
I think you use, just like any of these tools, it's all about implementation, garbage in, garbage out. A segment instance is dead on arrival if you do not have a solid instance And you can do just as many things with this Boolean-based system with a warehouse and other systems. You also could be paying double-digit contracts for CDPs, and you could potentially build it yourself with much more flexibility. So give or take, build versus buy, classic argument.
Yeah. But the trash in, trash out, I think that's not even an argument. That's just true.
No, I almost every single. That's the first thing I investigate when I start to work for a company or just talk with people is show me your implementation, and I can tell you within 20 minutes if your systems are actually going to be able to do anything. So it's very easy to assess those type of things.
And then the last question from Amy Shapiro: what are the size considerations in making these Boolean tag tables?
Some people don't like wide data, and you technically like wide being like you just kind of keep growing these Boolean badges. Obviously, I don't think you need to get into like like don't do a pivot table on activity detail and all of a sudden you have like 10,000 unique columns. I know not all systems support some type of pivot functionality, but I start with what's most important and things that map to the business. So similarly to like how you manage your CDP and when you build your segments, that's probably the number I would indicate. So marketers will build out a couple hundred, maybe to up to 1,000 of these things, but just know what's important. And plug for DBT, if you build them as DBT models, I think you like self documents and you can like put in little tags that describe what the field is along the way. I am not a Parker is the one who just got DBT certified. I'm not, so maybe he can verify if that's true.
That is true, yeah. But it's the same thing. It's like the ability to document is there. It's if you document. So it's like it makes it very simple for you, but if you don't document, which is a very hard habit to continue. Oh, we actually just got another question. Thanks, Amy. Mariah Rogers. I'm trying to add that up. And this will be our last question for the day. There we go. Okay, that one's from Mariah. Why use Boolean badge? Okay, you can read that.
Yeah. So basically, why use Boolean badges instead of slowly change dimension? I love slowly change dimensions. I have often used slowly change dimensions to prove somebody wrong because I can rebuild entire databases any moment in time. The reason I don't use them in this situation is the complexity. You have to be a little bit savvy to actually understand how slowly changing dimensions work. You'd be pretty deep into the data architecture world, and then querying it. I know you can often do like is recent row, but it's not inherently explainable as simple as a table. A person have done X, and there's obviously a time decay that you can build into it. But I often start with just a Boolean because it's easier to understand. If someone who's more experienced wants to build it as a slowly change dimension, all for that. I think that's a wonderful concept, and that's actually a better version of it. But just for the simplicity perspective, that's how I generally like to do it.
Awesome. And if you guys have more questions for Brett, you can ask them in the Operational Analytics Club. Up top on your screen, it says join the club, and you can ask Brett any question there, and he will be happy to answer them. And
very
that
easy to find on the
session.
internet. So just find me somewhere. I'm everywhere. So
yeah. Thank you very much for the presentation. We really enjoyed it. And next up, we have Carlos Scalisi, and we will be back in about 1 minute. So stick around, guys. Thank you.